The moves by na chips and talk of
space.
What time is it?
Starts 5 to 6. Sit down, Kobe.
Sorry, the number you have dialed is busy. Please try again later.
Until that read almost the whole day.
So you can sister you know also in Kingdom Honga Kele. Ate nakati mbuba kamugoba bagoba nakati emirundi oba esatu nakati yali ahamba abantu it's a lack of self-control. If you are lecturers as a single person, you'll be lecturers as a married person. Marriage does not solve such things.
Sharifa not the big. Okay. The burden of reproductive justice and the need for legal reform. Okay. Sabra.
But they can start together on a drive.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to my Twitter space. Today we're going to be discussing the burden of reproductive justice and the need for legal reform. And I'll probably be asking some of my panelists if there is a need for legal reform anyway. My name is Daniel Utaya. I am a journalist. I've reported a lot about these issues that we're going to be talking about today. Issues to do with unsafe abortions, post-abortion care in Uganda, the law, the restrictiveness of the law, I've spoken to some experts from Uganda, gynecologists, people from abroad, and even people from East Africa, and sometimes on spaces such as this, in trying to get an understanding of what other countries in East Africa and even Africa are doing differently, and also trying to understand the data, because the data with regard to Uganda is very damning. It's very complicated. A complicated situation where the science is saying one thing, but society wants to believe another thing. And today I will be joined by McLean Chomia, who is the Executive Director, Alliance for Women Advocating for Change. I'm also expecting Dr. Simon Kayondo, obstetrician, gynecologist, and project coordinator, AOGO, and Esther Dafa, who is the program officer, strategic litigation at SEHAD. And The hashtag is safe and legal care, so you can go on that hashtag, pick up some information. And I also would like to my listeners to go to the bottom right hand corner of your screen, click on the chat box at the bottom, and then get to write your comments or questions to the panelists as the conversation goes on. I have one panelist already here. Esther just joined right now. So Esther, you're welcome. Please request for the microphone. But as Esther requests for the mic, let me ask McLean to introduce herself. McLean's Twitter handle is a very long one. She goes by Humble Chomia McLean #billionaire. She'll get to tell us all about that later on. McLean, please introduce yourself.
Okay.
And say hello to her.
Hi. Thank you so much, Daniel. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone in whatever country you're in. Humble Kiomia McLean, and I work with the Alliance of Women Advocating for Change. It's a grassroots network of sex workers or grassroots sex work organizations, and I'm also a member of CCMOA. Thank you, Daniel. Over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Esther, you are welcome. Please say hello to my listeners and tell them about what you do and who you are. Esther, are you there? I think Esther is having some technical problems. Esther, if you could unmute, maybe you've not unmuted. Or it's also possible that you're having serious technical difficulties that need technical assistance. So here's the thing for my panelists and anybody who hopes in the in the later parts of this talk show when I open the lines. If you wish to speak, you must be using Twitter on a phone or X, whatever they call it nowadays. If you're using X on a laptop or a computer, you'll be able to listen, but you won't be able to speak. So make sure you're using X on a phone. Make sure that phone is connected to a very good internet connection, and your phone should not be hotspotting other gadgets. You should have all the windows that are open in the background. Just close all the windows. Make sure you are, all the, the only window that's open on your phone should be X, such that we can hear you. So Esther, if you could please request for the mic again, and then I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. But as we wait for Esther and Dr. Simon to come, let's start with McLean, who is here. So McLean, in your experience, what are the primary barriers that prevent women and girls from accessing safe and legal abortion services in Uganda?
Thank you so much again, Daniel, and also to our listeners. The key barriers, I think, are very obvious. One of them is stigma associated to the house services, especially specifically here we are talking about access to safe abortion, for example. Legal barriers, issues relating to the legal restrictions around some specific communities, and I refer to key populations, for example, and here I'm looking at LGBTIQ+, I'm looking at sex workers, women using and injecting drugs, I'm looking at people in incarcerated setting who are also very restrictive. We look at the legal environment, which is very restrictive in a way that either by the nature of the lifestyle they live or by the nature of work or profession they do, that is sex work. When I say the lifestyle, we are looking at here people using and injecting drugs, sexual orientation, gender identity, access to safe abortion. We all know safe abortion is is very restrictive in many of the countries in Africa, I would say, including Uganda. Though it's available and acceptable when a woman's life is threatened, and we think that some of those options and coding that I would say restrictive coding that we put on individuals, on practices, actually affect so many people and so many communities from accessing the services, but also are very key barriers to accessing services. Then, of course, issues to do with stigma and discrimination, more or less, more so the issue of stigma, culture, religion, practices fueled by, of course, again, the punitive laws. Many of us, we have, society has taught us that as a woman, you're supposed to behave like this, dress like this, eat like this, do A, B, C, D. When you give birth, the sex of the child is given at birth, and so this person, but nobody has the history where all this naming actually started from, where it started from. But society has brought us like that, and we all believed that that's what should be believed, or that's what is normal in quote or in bracket. And also our religion, whatever is preached, is preached within our communities. You realize that if we have to do a cross from the forehead to the heart, then across our hand, you cannot start from the shoulder, one shoulder to the other. So you realize that most of the things that we are doing, like for example, if it comes to sex workers, if you choose to do sex work, the religion promotes marriage. Whether you are in that marriage, whether you're happy or not, whether you have issues to do with disability issues, name it. You must bound by that. Whether you're experiencing gender-based violence, that is okay. When a woman has, most times in a relationship, a woman cannot tell or cannot decide how many children she can have, but society will choose, and or the husband or the partner will choose, and that partner is empowered by, of course, the stereotypes within our community or our societies, which is not bad. But then at the same time, we do not care, or they do not care about the health and realities of this woman. Whether I have the potential and capability to look after these children, it is very hard. Whether the husband is is not looking after the children or paying school fees, nobody wants to know, but you're supposed to give birth. And under circumstances where I feel like, for me as McLean, I want to have 2 kids, 4 kids, that's enough as long as I'm able to look after this. And if there is an extra who comes and I think I'm not ready to have this child and I want to terminate, don't do that, because the Bible says you'll be, you don't kill, because the society says then you're a bad woman, then you are bothering so we place all these practices, all these stereotypes on a woman, and indeed it becomes a huge burden for a woman, but also it becomes a huge barrier for us to access services, I would say. Then, of course, talk about issues of, I can say, the low self-esteem as a woman. Many of us, things to do with crying of a woman, it is normal. When you're in a family and the family is humble, you have less resources, first priority is actually given to a boy child. So the woman is always a second priority or a second choice. And that also is a very huge barrier to women making choice about our health, about education, about our rights, about everything that we actually want to own. Very few women who are empowered enough and who stand their ground and say, this is what I want, this is how I'm going to do it. Like, once you do that, you've stepped overboard, you are a bad girl, you're a spoiled woman, you're a bad woman, you're a breakman, you'll be labeled all those bad names. And of course, that naming also brands you as a woman who is less respecting our religion, less respecting our culture, not woman enough. Maybe you are homosexual, maybe you are a sex worker, actually not a sex worker, a prostitute. So all these kind of stereotypes within our community, within our society, actually can act as a huge barrier for women's empowerment, women's access to health services, women's practicing choice and bodily autonomy, pleasure, sex, love, and all name it. Yeah, over to you.
All right, thank you. I'm trying to get Dr. Simon on board also. He's having trouble with his gadget. But let me bring in Esther. Esther, what human rights are trampled when women have no access or have a very high restriction with regard to access to safe and legal abortion care services?
Good.
Is it a human rights issue anyway?
Good. Good evening, everyone. Daniel, kindly confirm that you can hear me before I proceed.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So my name is Dafa Esther, and I'm a lawyer by profession, and also an advocate practicing law in the courts of Uganda, and also I'm working with SEHAD in the litigation department. Yeah, but I also coordinate a network of lawyers called the Legal Support Network that provides legal support.
Esther, could you get maybe closer to your microphone or the device that you're using such that we can hear you louder?
Okay. Is this better?
Yes,
So
it's better.
I was saying that my name is Dafa Esther. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I work with SEHAD in the litigation department. But I also coordinate the Legal Support Network, which is a network of lawyers that provide legal support to health service providers that are providing reproductive health care services and who interface with the criminal justice system. So I think for me, one thing I'd like to state when I'm starting my conversation today is that we are not here, unlike what people always think, we are not here to promote abortion and tell everyone, oh, please go and, have abortions as much as you want, no. We are here to talk about abortion as health care. We are here to talk about the very many unsafe abortions that are happening in the country that are making very many people to lose their lives, to lose key aspects of their health, and sometimes either it leads to mortalities or morbidities. So when we talk about the burden of reproductive justice and the need for legal reform, we are making a case for the fact that so many people, women, down there in our villages, in towns, in the different areas where we work, in the different areas where we stay, are facing the burden of unsafe abortions, and they are facing this burden because the legal environment is not being supportive to them. Whereas they would like to seek a service or a safe service instead of going for the unsafe abortions, they're scared of being, held up in the criminal justice system. They're scared of being arrested. They're scared of being taken to police because they have sought such a service. And every time we keep making the law very restrictive and oppressive, for lack of a better word, to many of these women and girls that seek these services, we are only creating more and more barriers, and we are not protecting their lives and not protecting their health as well. So the first right I'll talk about definitely is the right to health. I mean, it's very unfair that people that have money or who can afford to go and seek a safe service are the ones who are able to survive through their life and their health. But someone down there who may need the service but either cannot afford it or is not sure of where to go or decides to opt for an unsafe method, it is very unfair that you are trying to create a burden on their health system. The right to health is a critical component for every person to enjoy. It doesn't require you to have money to enjoy it. It doesn't require you to be an adult or to be more professional or to have a good job to enjoy it. It's a right that accrues to each and every Ugandan in whatever state you are. But the problem with it is that there's a lot of inequality right now in terms of healthcare service delivery when it comes to safe reproductive healthcare services. So the right to health becomes one of the rights that actually is implicated when women and girls are denied access to safe and legal abortion because they are unable to access the healthcare that they need when they need it, and because of that imbalance, either they end up, either losing their life or maybe getting through certain morbidities that affect them throughout their entire life. Which brings me to the point of the right to life as well. When we're talking about unsafe abortions, if any woman, if any girl faces a barrier and they end up going for an unsafe abortion, that girl, that woman, sometimes in worst case scenarios, they end up losing their lives. And once that woman or once that girl loses their life, we are already, bringing a burden to the lives out there of many people. Maybe it could be their mother, their father, or a daughter, or a son who has been relying on them, So the right to life also comes into play, because every time we create barriers for access to safe and legal care, we are creating barriers to people's lives. Someone is going to go out there and trust a quack doctor who may not even know what to do. We were going through, I think we were watching a story few months ago or a few weeks ago about a quack doctor who was busy providing healthcare services to people, and everyone was trusting him, yet he was actually a quack. So we risk people losing their lives because they are going to quack doctors who are not professional, who are not educated, who don't even have the basic minimum skills to provide this care. And all that is happening because of the restrictive legal environment, or because of the stigma associated with people seeking safe and legal care. So for me, I think that when we look at people accessing safe care, it is a human right aspect. We need to look at it as a human rights and health aspect, because the more we keep creating barriers, the more we keep creating systems that are not supportive of these women and girls to seek the health care that they need, which is safe, we are only going to keep damaging, or we are going to only keep violating many of their rights that could include the right to health and even the right to life, and many other rights that could, come through with such their key rights being violated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esther. Now, the conversation again, like these topics of abortion rights and so on and so forth, they are very heated subjects when it comes to Uganda. I have a comment here already from at W Mungadi, who is in Iowa. He says it is just the law. These other things are wali, according to him. So again, like I said, anybody can contribute. You just have to go to the button and write your comment or question there. Again, I have all my panelists, but I'm still trying to get Dr. Simon Peter to join. He is on the call, but for some reason I cannot see him. I cannot see his account here, and that's something that Twitter does sometimes, ever since it became X. I don't know why. McLean, how can we ensure that policymakers prioritize the needs and voices of women and girls in Uganda, and that they prioritize them regardless of their experiences, their jobs, their without any sort of discrimination? Because from my experience reporting about stories such as stories about abortion, unsafe abortions, I've done everything really, documentaries, written series, and people seem to say, okay, abortion for a certain group it is okay, but for this one it is not okay. Sex workers, no, So how do we have a balance of everything? How do we make sure that it is actually universal? Because from what Esther says, it looks like these are human rights, and rights should be given to everybody that requires them.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. And thanks, Esther, as well, for the beautiful submissions. What should be done? I think my answer, to be very specific and direct, is bring the affected communities to the steering wheel. Let the people affected take lead in the decision making and be consulted 100% even in policies, guidelines, laws, bills, acts which affect them or related to the issues that affect them. The biggest challenge and gap we've had all along and always in Uganda, maybe even in the other countries, that people assume and they start thinking on behalf. But we believe and we go by the principle of UNAIDS, leave no one behind. And if we yet leave no one behind, the other saying goes that the owner of the shoes know where it pinches most. There is no way where someone can understand the reality of life and experiences, the lived experiences of an individual that you've never been or they have never been. The biggest challenge is we assume and we read the essays, we read books, we read history, we read the penal code, the laws, the penal codes which even came in place even even when some of the people who are responsible for developing these laws or reviewing these policies were not even maybe born. But we still assume that no, for the sex workers, we think they need to transition. We think they should get saved. We think we think even the same thing when it comes to access to services. The assumption I think is what has failed all of us, especially when it comes to actually developing policies, guidelines. But if we would engage and meaningfully engage, not just to bring people on the table and tell them, we have this consultation and it started actually 3 days back, but we are happy you've come. Today we are closing. Kindly sign for us here. For us, that is actually total blackmail, but also it's actually using us just like you may use, you want to have sex, you go buy a condom and use it, then you dump it. It is very wrong, and all along in our advocacy, and I'm very sure with all the civil societies that we work with, the human rights organizations, we call upon for meaningful involvement of the affected populations to be at the center stage, to be part and parcel of the drafting, the implementation, the monitoring, and the reporting. Because in that way, we minimize the risks, but also the mistakes that that can be made. But also, we are also able to actually hold ourselves accountable. Then we will not point fingers that this ministry did not do this. This policy is not being implemented. Why? Because all of us are going to hold each other accountable to make sure that this policy we have developed, these guidelines we have developed, it's my role and my responsibility as well to make sure that it is effected, it is implemented, and I need to report back to my constituency, but also to the stakeholders that I've worked with. So for us, we still think that if we could bring the people on board as key stakeholders, not to blame game. We can see, for example, when the numbers speak, the scientists will tell you the numbers speak that we are seeing this number of young people dying as a result of unsafe abortion, especially from the rural district of so and so. It's important when we are doing research, can we sit with these young girls or communities or even the caretaker, what is exactly happening? But when we come and do our concepts or abstract, then we go and then we just take ideas and information, we forget what we call the root cause. And once we miss out on that, even the end result can never be right. I think for me, that's why we have missed the point. Thank you.
All right, we've missed a point. And like I said, there is a lot of conversation about rights, and then restricting the rights to a certain group, and etc. And I want to bring in Esther about international human rights frameworks. What role can they play in shaping Uganda's sexual and reproductive health rights policies? Because from what I know, we are signatory to many of these international declarations about human rights, and these things are enshrined in there. But then, what role can these things play? These international conventions and international treaties that we sign with regard to human rights. Esther.
Thank you, Daniel, once again. I would like to start by saying that the different human rights principles and treaties that Uganda ratifies or accepts to be obliged by, these outline legal obligations on the state, in this case, which is Uganda, and we are supposed to be bound by them, because these treaties and frameworks and different principles that we actually ratify or decide to be bound by as a state, these are part of the guiding frameworks and principles. First of all, they are part of our laws. Yeah, they are part of our laws, and because they are part of our laws, that is why it is required most of the time that if a country ratifies a particular treaty, they have to come back and domesticate it. So they provide these legal obligations on the state, but also by becoming parties to them, the state also assumes obligations to respect the rights that are enshrined within those different principles, but also the state accepts to be held accountable. So these are part of our laws, and I think for me, what we need to do as a country is to come back and domesticate, but also to come back and ensure that we are bound and we follow the different legal obligations in these principles. I'll give an example. Uganda ratified the Maputo Protocol, the Maputo Protocol. And this particular protocol is one of the best protocols that I have seen that clearly talks about the right to health and SRHR in general. They talk about everything reproductive justice. They talk about everything reproductive health. And it's a very good law that you can actually look at and be like, yeah, every state should actually have such principles or such provisions in their laws. But as a country, we ratified the treaty, the protocol, and we reserved one of the most important sections of that law, which is Article 14, to say that speaks about the right of women to actually access, among others, safe abortion care. So we are more of saying that as a country we shall oblige by the treaty and take on every obligation, but we shall specifically have a reservation on this particular section, which doesn't make sense to me. As a country that is invested in, investing in women, that is invested in promoting people's health. Why do we decide to look at health in bits and pieces? Why do we think that maternal health, issues of teenage pregnancies, issues of menstrual hygiene are the more important, or are the ones that we should focus on, but not issues of unsafe abortions? I feel like that's already creating some sort of discrimination in the way that we look at the issues. We are very fast to create laws and policies that, protect people going through particular health-related issues, but not this particular issue of unsafe abortion, because we feel like it is ungodly, it's not biblical enough, it is a sin. I feel like we are starting to create that discrimination amongst ourselves, right from the leadership roles, right from the laws and policies, up to the community down there, to the woman, to the girl that needs the services. So for me, I think these instruments play a very big role in terms of holding us accountable as a country on how we are respecting and promoting and protecting human rights, which is a core obligation that the government is supposed to do as per our constitution. And for me, I think we need to take these treaties in good faith. We need to take these treaties in a way that allows us to be able to implement what they say. If you are taking on a treaty, or if you ratify a treaty as a country, we have to come back and ensure that we actually live by the obligations therein, domesticate them and put them in our domestic laws, but also, take on the standards that the treaty sets, because by the time these particular provisions or rights make their way into those particular treaties, it is because that is the practice at the global stage. So I think for me, we just need to be objective, as different stakeholders, and take on these treaties as laws that are going to be encouraging us or even guiding us as a country to make ourselves better in terms of our legal and policy frameworks, instead of looking at them like Western agenda or laws that come in to, take away our rights. They are a very critical part of our laws, and I think we need to accept to be bound by them and the obligations that they set, rather than choosing to look at it like they're not necessarily part of the culture or society that we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esther. I can see Mr. William Mugeni has already requested for the mic. I'm going to give it to you just shortly. I want to bring in McLean. Is this because everybody is talking about, like we are bringing up this conversation, but is this a problem that is big enough in Uganda? And that's what most people ask whenever we talk about post-abortion care, when we talk about safe and legal care. Everyone is saying, is this a big enough problem? How is this a problem of Uganda? Is it actually happening? Are unsafe abortions indeed happening in Uganda? And since you work with the community, I would like to ask, what is the situation on the ground with regard to unsafe abortions? Are they happening? Is it something that we need to find a solution for? Is it a crisis? McLean?
Hello, Daniel. Thank you so much again for the question. Yes, I must say yes. It's a big deal, and it's an issue indeed. I may not have the correct statistics, but before we end the meeting, I will make sure that I share the statistics. But one thing I'm very certain, that we have very specific numbers of people, women in the communities that have died as a result of unsafe abortion. And it's a big deal or a big issue. Why? Because some of these numbers have not even been documented by researchers or by scientists. But one thing I can say, we have lost at our specific drop-in center where I work. We have cases of around 13, I think 13, for the last 12, for the 2 years, past 2 years, of women that we have lost trying to actually do unsafe abortion. And for us, the issue is not even about these huge numbers or the many numbers, but every one woman's life actually is important, and it counts to the Ugandans. So I must say that it's a big deal, because today, if it's not in someone's house or it's not someone's relative, you can never feel the pain or the burden of it. But until you actually lose someone who is very close to you, you may realize, or you may find actually that this is now an issue. But also the statistics, again, we are getting from health facilities, government facilities, where we see many women actually dying as a result of unsafe abortion. It's not that they are far distance relatives. These are fellow Ugandans that we live with, that we vote with, that our parents or sisters or brothers or our children. So it is an issue. And it is very important that for us, that we look at it in a very positive mind, without being biased because of our culture, because of our religion. But we look at it as, just like Esther said, that abortion is a public health issue, and it is important for us to embrace it from that perspective. It's not about say that everybody go and do an abortion. Think about the population that we have in the country. Think about the level of poverty that every Ugandan is actually, experiencing. Just look at the number of, for us, every time we see the country in a crisis, we're coming from the sex work movement. We see very many, I would say many young women, many women getting into sex work. As we speak, we have 13,000 female sex workers who self-proclaim or tell that I am a sex worker doing sex work. Now, these are only sex workers that have actually confessed that I am a sex worker. But imagine there's so many other sex workers who do not even confess or tell their story that I am a sex worker. Look about the children, that the many children, again, we are seeing also many influx. Girls going to school, graduating, there are no jobs, and they end up going to the same trade. What does that tell you? It tells that the situation is actually, it's beyond us. So reality is we must face it. We have to stop burying our heads into the sand and face the reality. Because if we do not face it now, it will face us in the future, or it will face our new generations. And we do not want that to happen. So let us first boldly stand our feet, hold each other, and address these challenges. And think of laws, positive laws. Laws are going to create an enabling environment that where women will be empowered enough to come up and demand for these services, to walk into a facility and say, look, I have this, and I think I'm pregnant and I need to actually access this service. Not because I'm sick, not because I've been forced, but because I want to continue with my career, but because I'm not ready to have this, this person at this age or at this time. So that environment is very important for us. And for us, from the sex work movement, from the community, we are saying that whoever is representing us at whatever level, let us work together. We have the evidence, we have the numbers. Let us discuss, let us sit on the round table and talk about our realities as women. Even the men who sit on those tables, talk to us. We give you the numbers, reflect on these numbers, and come up with very positive laws and policies and guidelines that are going to empower me as your wife, me as your child, me as your daughter, me as your neighbor, me as your mother, to actually be able to access safe abortion services at whatever level in all government facilities. I raise my case. Thank you.
Thank you, McLean. Esther, the biggest fear of some of the Ugandans that are against the access of legal and safe abortion for women in Uganda is that women are going to abort all the children, and then there won't be any children. What is your experience from other countries that have decided to go progressive and have legalized and created avenues for women to seek safe and legal abortion care services. Has that been the case?
Yes, Daniel. So what I can say is that the countries that have actually, I'll prefer to use the word regulated, because most times when you use legalized, again, it goes back to the misconception that people normally have, that legalizing means open up abortion to each and everyone, every girl, every woman who wants to, abort and make it open. No. What other countries, some countries like South Africa, that are open and have actually regulated abortion services, what it has done is that it has at least reduced the burden of the unsafe abortions. So when they are talking about statistics of the unsafe abortions and how these are leading to maternal mortalities and morbidities, their statistics are quite lower compared to countries like Uganda that criminalize. So regulating is more of putting in place particular measures for when a woman can seek and who can provide the service and how do they provide it and how are they supervised. There are particular criteria that are put in place for regulation where they make it clear where a woman can seek a safe service and if they're to seek a safe service, under what circumstances, but also who can provide that service, because not everyone provides the service. Right now, as it is in Uganda, anyone can provide a service. I used to see scenarios a few years ago where you would be like, let's say, moving in town, in Kampala town, and you find a signpost like, for abortion services, call this number. Many of those guys were actually quack doctors, but because anyone can provide or anyone can purport or claim to be a professional. So regulating is more of guide the people on under what circumstances, like, can a person seek a safe care service, where can they seek it, who provides the service, and also ensuring that these people actually followed up and supervised to ensure that they are providing safe care. That way we are encouraging women to desist from going for the unsafe abortions that continue to make many of them lose their lives, and we keep on spending a lot of money as a country to cure or treat the burdens from the unsafe abortions. What does it benefit us to spend a lot of money curing the problems or the repercussions that come from unsafe abortions when we can actually create a safe environment for people to actually seek safe care without having to expose their lives and their health at risk of death or morbidities? So we need to take into consideration or take serious the fact that we have to put in place all measures to enable women enjoy their reproductive rights. That's what, like, the Maputo Protocol actually says in Article 14 to see that states shall take all possible measures to protect and fulfill and even ensure that women actually enjoy their reproductive rights. We cannot talk about reproductive justice again when we are looking at it in bits and pieces. Everything SRHR, including safe abortion care services, are part of ensuring that we enable people access reproductive justice. So if you are to talk about this objectively, we need to also look at the problems of unsafe abortion and ensure that we remove all those barriers to be able to enable women access safe care. So we need to create a law that clearly regulates termination of pregnancy in Uganda in ways that actually I mentioned about, vis-a-vis criminalizing. Because criminalizing, right now abortion is criminalized in Uganda, very criminalized, They criminalize not only the girl who seeks it, but also the provider who provides, but also any supplier, of any drug or anything that is supplied to enable a woman remove or terminate their pregnancy. They criminalize, but each and every day, in almost 10 women plus are going for unsafe abortions. Every day a woman or women are somewhere there dying because of unsafe abortions. So criminalizing has actually never made abortion stop. Criminalizing when it makes people desist from going for safe care, and they choose to go and do it in ways that they think is safe, and they become part of our daily statistics. And we keep saying every day how unsafe abortions are among the leading causes of maternal mortality in Uganda. When are we going to come and talk about the fact that as a country, we have cut down on, Like our statistics are showing that women are seeking more of the safe care and not the unsafe abortions. If women are dying, what are we going to do to protect them? Should we keep criminalizing them from seeking care? Should we keep criminalizing doctors, surgeons, gynecologists from providing a safe service, and they fear to provide it because they're scared of either they're going to arrest them, police is going to arrest them, or they'll at some point not be able to practice their career. So I feel like we need to look at unsafe abortion let's discuss abortion in a very positive way and not be looking at it like it is a woman's problem or it's a cultural problem or a religious problem. Let's look at it as a healthcare problem, a healthcare crisis that needs to be, worked on, that needs to be worked on by way of coming up with legal reforms that actually protect and encourage different people to seek but also to provide the care so that we can be able to reduce the statistics of unsafe abortions. And then finally, we need to lift the reservation of the Maputo Protocol. Like I mentioned, I don't understand why as a country we would put a reservation on one of the most important clauses that encourage women, that encourage people everywhere to enjoy their reproductive health rights and choices. I think we should trust women to know what is good for them and regulate them when we can, but also not force them or make them make decisions that make them sometimes lose their lives. It's very painful for someone to die because of an unsafe abortion when they could have actually had the chance to access a safe service. It's bad. Maybe a person who hasn't gone through it may not understand, but different women are out there suffering and crying every day for someone to help them out. So for me, I think the first point in this whole, legal reforms and policy reforms is for us to look at abortion and discuss abortion in a positive way that encourages women to desist from unsafe abortions, that encourages us to remove all the legal barriers. But secondly, how can we protect them by law? And that is by regulating the service to be able to enable them access a safe service without fear of being caught up by the law or without fear of having them lose their lives due to unsafe abortions. Thank you very much.
All right, so I was looking at some numbers here, and the numbers I have may not be accurate, but Martin said she'll try to find us things that no, not accurate. The numbers are accurate, but they are not current. That's what I meant. So by 2013, Uganda had about 39 per 1,000 women aged 15 to 49 reported cases of unsafe abortions. That was around 314,300 abortions annually, and that is the highest in East Africa. And according to Makerere University School of Public Health, about 4 out of every 10 women in Uganda have had an unplanned pregnancy, unintended pregnancy. That is according to a 2021 report by the Makerere University School of Public Health. So it is a problem. Let me open the floor now to speakers from the general public. If you can, just request for the microphone. I'm going to start with Mr. William Mugeni. Please go ahead, unmute, and give us your question or comment.
Good morning, retirees. It's at 8:09 in the US. Retire. This discussion is a tricky discussion in that, of course, it has the moral side, it has the legal side, it has the political side. But retire, I can say in the US or Iowa, maybe generally in the US, you can say the pro-life people have had the yes. And it takes that level because I participated in the not only in the debate but in the campaigns for elections. And you'd go to knock on a door of a woman, and the woman will a woman will tell you point blank in your face, Trump wants to take away my reproductive right. I'm not voting for him. I will vote for Kamala Harris. That's what it takes. Then you go to the next home and one said, yeah, are you pro-life or not? Is your candidate pro-life or not? I'm not voting. So it takes the citizenry. It takes the citizens. It takes the political line. It takes empowering the voter, whether man or woman. And issues of reproductive rights and life in the US are very, very strong. First and foremost, those who are pro-life have systems in place. If you came out and declare that you are pregnant and you want to abort, the support system alone is just too good. And that even goes to the state itself, because you declare, there's no fear. I want to terminate this pregnancy, and then the support system is stimulated. First of all, the level at which the mothers are supported to have a child, it's just too good. And so, as a Ugandan, I used to, I'm a service provider. I was a service provider in reproductive health, trained by Ministry of Health. So, I think if you ask me as James, would you provide abortion? I would say yes. Of course, you are struggling with the figures, you're struggling with getting the data, but maternal mortality is still high, and one of the issues they give is unsafe abortions. And some of us who have practiced, of course, clinics in Uganda, I don't fear to tell you this, but to run a clinic in Uganda, a private clinic, I think one of the best things one of the services you should be ready to provide is an abortion. Because it literally will support your clinic. It will help you run the clinic. The rates are so high and are silent because of the law. That's why I say the rest is worried. It's the law. Most service providers, I think, are trained. And abortion, after all, is just dilating and curating. It's as simple as that. Dilate and curate. Maybe at what month? But we hide it under the name of course, people say post-abortive care. Then if you ask them, but who gave the abortion if you have post-abortive care somewhere? That's what Ministry of Health provides in all these hospitals and what have you, or health centers. They say post-abortive care. But if you ask them who did the abortion, then we hide under that. I think it's marriage stops that was doing it freely in Uganda before I left Uganda, it was marriage stops that was doing abortion. But as a matter of fact, it's an argument that would require the women to put all citizens, not only women, to put in their all. Do you support it, yes or no? Then what are the reasons? For me, I regard it as a primary health care. As a primary health care provider, I would regard it as a primary health care, and that's what has been my argument in most of these doors I knock in the US. I tell them, it's a primary health care. Let's have health workers argue for you. They'll tell you why it should be done. But the health workers in Uganda, of course, have taken a back seat. They fear. You can't even see them. They know it happens. So it's as bad as that, but it takes the citizens. The pro-life had it this time. The election in the US basically has run on reproductive health. It has run on reproductive health. Most voters were saying yes, they're against abortion, so they voted Trump. On the Christian side, they look at him as holy. I think that's the little I can tell you, retire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are some more questions coming through on the chat. The chat is at the bottom right corner of the screen. I have a question. Okay, a series of questions from Niwaha Asaf, who asks, number 1, is abortion allowed in Uganda? Esther, I hope you are writing, and McLean, I don't know who's going to answer what, but there are a couple of questions, so I have to read all of them. Is abortion allowed in Uganda? Question 1. Question 2, who can abort? Question 3, why abort? Question 4, when should one abort? Is it having side effects? Then lastly, he says, I am on for answers. So he's on the space for answers to these questions. Since those are questions, I'm going to ask Esther to answer them, and then McLean, in that order.
I pass to
Thank
Madam
you,
Esther.
Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, is abortion allowed in Uganda? Right now, as the law provides all states, abortion is restricted. Restricted in the sense that there are particular instances when a woman is actually allowed to seek their care, and there are others when it is actually criminalized, like I mentioned earlier. Which brings me to the question of when can one abort? So right now, the so-called law that we keep saying, the law in place that regulates abortion, is the penal code, which to me, I know it's a criminal, it's a penal law, and therefore only provides crimes and their punishments. But in that penal code, there's a particular provision which accepts a surgeon or a gynecologist to provide, to conduct a safe abortion service on a woman whose life is at risk. So in instances where a woman is pregnant, but because of her pregnancy, maybe her pregnancy puts her in a situation where her life is at risk. And upon maybe the various assessments and tests, the healthcare service provider actually confirms that if they do not terminate that pregnancy, the woman is going to lose her life. The penal code or the law in place seems to suggest that when a woman's life is at risk, then you are allowed to safely conduct that operation on her. Yeah. So when can a woman abort? When her life is at risk, and when keeping the pregnancy is going to make her lose her life. In that particular instance, the law or the penal code provides the person who is in charge, or the provider who is qualified at that point in time to conduct an operation on the woman, and they save her life in that instance. Who can abort? Like I mentioned, of course it's a woman. I don't think a man can seek an abortion care service, but a woman who is pregnant and also a woman whose life is at risk, by law, you are allowed to seek that care, and the doctor has to actually do that procedure. So in instances where that particular woman or that particular doctor is actually held up, or they are arrested for providing the so-called abortion care service, the defense at that point in time is that the woman's life is at risk, and if you can adduce all the evidence, the assessments, the medical examinations that have been done and everything, and it all proves that her life was at risk vis-a-vis her pregnancy at that point in time, they are protected by law. Why abort? This is quite vague for me to answer, but why abort? I mean, according to the law, as I've mentioned for you, you only abort, or you only have that defense when the woman's life is at risk. And it's not just about you saying my life is at risk. Different tests and evidence has to be adduced that indeed the only option left to save your life at that point in time was to terminate your pregnancy. If you do not fall within this particular defense, then any other form of seeking abortion care service is actually criminalized under the penal code. And that's why we are saying that we need legal reforms. Because first of all, the penal code is a 1950 law. Like, so many years have passed since that law was formulated. And whereas our government is in the process of trying to amend it, we feel like maybe at that point in time, that was the need, or that was the reality. But realities have since changed right now. I've spoken to doctors who actually tell you that we no longer conduct such operations like what the law refers to. We have modern methods of terminating people's pregnancies in a safe and legal manner. So society has changed, needs have changed. So we can no longer rely on the law as is. We need the law to be made fair to women who are seeking care beyond just what is provided for right now. And finally, the reason why I talked about we need to create a law that regulates or safe abortion in Uganda is because the law that we have in place right now, which we keep referring to, is a penal law. A penal law that merely provides for crimes and their punishments. We cannot be referring to it as the law in place that regulates. We need a law that clearly helps us answer all these questions of who can seek a safe service, who can provide the service, when can they provide the service, who supervises them, and how do we hold them accountable. That way, I think we shall be trying to reduce the burden of the unsafe abortions, which remains a crisis for us as a country. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Esther. McLean, do you have any answers, or do you want to add to anything that Esther has said?
I think our council has said it all for sure. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
All right, let's go into final remarks because of time. I'll start with you, McLean, and then Esther finally. McLean, what are your final remarks on this? What, if we are to forget anything that you say today here, what do you want us to forget? By the way, I spoke to a sex worker on 28th September. I think, was it 28th September? I think that's the day of International Day of Safe Abortions. And she said sometimes they are raped by their clients, and they will find that they are pregnant. And because, as Esther said, the law says you can only access a safe abortion if you. And she spoke to me anonymously. Obviously, I will not disclose. But she said they can only access if the life is at risk. So they are forced to go into these clinics and meet quack doctors who will sometimes do wrong things, and they end up getting post-abortion care. So now that I've said that, McLean, please give us your closing remarks.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Daniel. And thank you so much again for always reaching out. Actually, the pregnancies for sex workers, they are not only from the clients, the normal or the usual clients, but also the police attorneys, members of parliament, and who are anonymous that we won't be able to talk about now. But anyway, so what should we do? I think for me, the point, like a colleague has spoken from the US, we need to decriminalize abortion. We need to decriminalize and remove all the legal conditions, terms, codes, whatever they call them. Why? Because if you are to follow the law and say, like it is now, that my life should be under threat. Yes, we agree. But if someone has raped me and I do not have any other signs or any other health-related issue, and for me the point is I want to walk in there and actually, remove or end it, then I will have to go through all that legal process of, questions and people counseling me, but McLean, we know you, why don't you get saved? Why don't you do? I mean, all those processes sometimes are also very traumatizing, and actually they limit many, they are key barriers to many to actually walk into that facility to seek or even seek for access of such an of a service. So if we forget anything today that we've talked about, we should remember that we need to create an enabling environment whereby services, access to safe abortion is available, accessible, affordable, and accessible by the clients who need it, or by women who need it. But also, it should also create that environment should be enabling that sexual productive health commodities comprehensively should also be available and accessible and affordable by all women in our diversities, by all women with multiple and intersecting vulnerabilities, even at whatever level, at the community level, at the grassroots, at the national, at whatever level, it should be available and accessible, because only this, it will empower us to be able to seek for services, to access services, but also be able to make decisions about our bodily autonomy, and also be able to make decisions relating to ourselves as women. And for me, that's how I defined healthcare. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, McLean. Esther, please go ahead and give us your closing remarks.
Yeah, for me, my closing remarks, I'll again start by saying that when we advocate for safe abortion care services, we are not encouraging people to go and just abort as and when they want to abort.
Esther,
We
could
are
you get close
only
to your mic
calling
again?
us to
Just get
stop.
close to your mic.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello? So, Daniel, I was saying, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I was saying that my parting shots for me is we need to look beyond abortion as a moral or cultural or religious or society issue, and look at abortion as a healthcare issue. Once we start looking at abortion as a healthcare issue, we are going to understand that there are so many women out there who are seeking unsafe abortions every other day, that there are so many women out there who are dying as a result of unsafe abortions, that there are so many women out there who are losing their uteruses and getting other morbidities due to unsafe abortion, and they might not even be able to ever have a child in their life. So we need to look at it as healthcare and be able to get solutions that enable women to access healthcare, because healthcare is provided for by people who are professionals. Healthcare is not provided for by people who are not professionals. Like, we need to look at it as healthcare and be able to create an environment, a legal environment where we have laws and policies that encourage, that guide, that regulate safe abortion in Uganda, but also healthcare in the sense of having professionals conduct this. And also we need to stop stigmatizing people that actually seek this care, because they need their care, and it being a healthcare issue, they need to be protected. So in everything that we are doing as advocates and in all our work, we need to look at abortion as healthcare. And once you look at it as healthcare, we are going to be able to create, to remove all the barriers in any form that stop women from accessing the self-healthcare and continue to lead to maternal mortalities and morbidities, or even death of women each and every day. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Esther, for those closing remarks. Today on my space, I had Chomia McLean, who is the Executive Director, Alliance for Women Advocating for Change, AWAC, and also had Esther Dafa, the Program Officer, Strategic Litigation at SEHAD. Dr. Kayondo Simon is on the space, and thank you, Doctor, for staying on. He has stayed on for the entire duration of the space, although he had technical difficulties that made it impossible for him to grab a mic. He's an obstetrician, gynecologist, and project coordinator, Awogu. Dr. Kayondo Simon's Twitter handle is at psimon, P-S-Y, Simon K. So you can, write to him in inbox and ask questions if you need the medical perspective on all of these things. But also continue this conversation. The hashtag is safe and legal care. Hashtag safe and legal care. So just go on that hashtag and pick some information. You can also go visit the SEHAD website and read information about the law, what it says, what you can do, and try to stay curious, look for information, and always do the right thing. And also do not forget, as citizens, it is your right to demand or request for certain laws. If you feel like a law needs to be repealed or changed or made better for your wellness, you need to request your leaders at local council level, at parliamentary level, your member of parliament. Write to them. There are websites, on the parliamentary website, all the MPs' phone numbers and emails are there. You can even tweet to them and tell them about these things, such that we can get the change that we so much desire and very much deserve. My name is Daniel Lutaya, and today this wraps up the space about the burden of reproductive justice and the need for legal reform. I hope that we've managed to give you value for the time that you have given us, and I thank you very much for listening. And depending on the direction of the sun, where you're listening from, it is a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night from us in Kampala. Bye-bye.
Bye.